Hello, my name is Ian Currey and this is another episode of Thinking Out Loud. Usually in these videos we dig around at something I've come across or perhaps something I've been reading about. I try to make the videos interesting enough to hold your attention and give you something to think about. Or perhaps show you something you already know in a little bit of a different way. Most people who watch these videos seem to enjoy them, and it would be lovely if more people could see them, wouldn't it? But that's up to you, sharing them with your friends. Usually a new video appears each weekend. This week I've been flying again, and I noticed a little link between some of the things I saw up there in the air and one or two of the things I'd been reading about. Come on, let me tell you what I think. Almost everyone I know has respect for Jesus and the things he said, even though he lived 2,000 years ago. And we only really know what he said by the few pages of writings that some of his followers recorded. Now, I'm sure in part that respect is because there's no record of Jesus ever deviating from what he said he would do. And when he said things like, love your enemies, he demonstrated how to do that to the point of getting himself killed for it. Last time we talked about building blocks of faith, and I recounted the story of Jesus feeding 5,000 people and how little he actually said in the whole process. His actions spoke for themselves, I suppose. Now, if you'd like to know the essence of what Jesus taught, you can find it in a few short chapters in the Bible, starting at Matthew chapter 5. And this well-known talk that Jesus gives is called the Sermon on the Mount, and it has a huge range of ideas there and themes well worth a read. Jesus talks about anger, relationships, keeping promises, loving our enemies, judging others, well, or rather not judging others, how to pray, and the golden rule, integrity, and so much more. He starts off his talk explaining how effective it is to be a good example, and ends it by telling people to follow his example. I love how Matthew sums up the things at the end of the talk. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowd were amazed at his teaching. Matthew, the master of understatement, I bet they were amazed. Now, most of you know that my job involves me flying for a commercial airline. Up there, safety, of course, is our number one thing. Have you ever noticed how precise the safety demonstration is and how the crew will tell you exactly what to do if something goes wrong? I expect if I pause for a moment or two, most of you that have flown would be able to at least recall the main points. Things like fasten your seatbelt. For example, if one of these falls down from a compartment above your seat, what should you do? Do you remember? What did the crew say last time? It's unlikely, but if cabin pressure changes, the panels above your seat will open, revealing oxygen masks. If this happens, reach up and pull a mask towards you until the tube is fully extended. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Slip the elastic strap over your head and adjust the mask if necessary. Breathe normally and note that oxygen is flowing even if the bag does not inflate. And then this part. Secure your own mask before helping others. Now, have you ever wondered what that part's about? Isn't it in our good nature to put others before self? I mean, even Jesus taught that, right? Well, maybe, sort of. Let me try to explain a little bit of what's going on. As we go higher and higher in an aircraft, the oxygen in the air outside gets less and less. The air pressure goes down steadily, and then once we get really high, it falls dramatically. Commercial aircraft fly at those really high altitudes for a number of reasons, but mainly because they can go a lot faster and use a lot less fuel in the thinner air. Now, once the aircraft goes over 8,000 feet or so, and sorry to my friends who work in meters, this is an American-based airline, so I'll stick with feet to today. But if you divide by 3, you'll get close to the right answer in meters. So now once we go over 8,000 feet off the ground, the pressure outside would start to be uncomfortable and a little low for us humans to breathe without starting to suffer from something called hypoxia. Now, hypoxia is a fancy name for not having enough oxygen to breathe. Inside the aircraft, the pressure is maintained what feels like 8,000 feet, even though we go higher. Now, unfortunately, without this artificial maintained cabin pressure, you would soon fall asleep. And in extreme circumstances, you'd never wake up again. Up and up we go, all the way up to 45,000 feet. Now that's really high. In miles, that's about 8.5 miles, and so almost 14 kilometers or so. Up there is so little oxygen in the air, and the air is so thin, that if you were outside, or the cabin pressure inside were the same as outside, breathing on your own would be almost impossible. And that's why these masks are so important. And if ever anything goes wrong with the pressurization systems, that's why these fall down automatically. There's a thing all of the crew know about called time of useful consciousness. Now, if the aircraft decompresses at that kind of altitude, there'd be a lot of things going on, but the time you would be conscious and be able to do anything useful would be just 15 seconds. And that isn't very long, is it? After just a few seconds, the symptoms of hypoxia kick in, and these include confusion and disorientation, as well, of course, shortness of breath. So I expect you can see that putting your own mask on is very important in that situation. Now, if you were to spend time worrying about someone else and why they didn't have their mask on and why they had it on wrong or upside down or something, by the time you did all that, you wouldn't be able to put your mask on without help. That's why the instructions are secure your own mask before helping others. That seems counterintuitive. It seems to go against our good upbringing to help others before ourselves, doesn't it? So what's this got to do with the Sermon on the Mount and the talk Jesus gave? Well, there's a sort of link that I'll show you. There's a short section that talks about not judging others. And as human beings, we like helping others, don't we? And sometimes that extends to making judgments about them and how they are behaving. And just like with the mask on the aircraft, our intention might be right. We want our loved ones to have a good time. We want them to have their mask on so that they can breathe. We want them to live right and think straight. But human nature in that case would be looking at someone else before looking at ourselves. Seems good, but let me show you how Matthew recorded this from what Jesus said. Do not judge others, and you will not be judged, for you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye, or perhaps why worry about your friend's mask, when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye, when you can't see past the log in your own? Hypocrite. First get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Now, isn't it true that so often we have a tendency to judge others by our standards before we have our own thinking straight? Are we following any of the teachings that Jesus had in his talk? Elsewhere in this same talk, Jesus talks about loving our enemies, and that alone would take a whole lot of thinking out loud, wouldn't it? There are some lovely parts of this talk that I really enjoy too. Maybe you can take a look at the whole thing later, but one of my favorite parts is to do with this whole judging thing. We don't need to judge others. They judge themselves by their actions. Yes, just as you can identify a tree by its fruits, so you can identify people by their actions. If a person continually acts in a particular way, lies or cheats, denies truth, or simply has an ugly attitude, we don't need to judge them. They do it to themselves for all to see. Taking a deep breath before we decide to speak out might give others a chance to demonstrate who they truly are as they judge themselves, and us time to identify the log in our own eye. Until next time, goodbye.